14 months inside the US government, and nobody knew. December 2020. A security analyst at FireEye notices something strange. Someone has registered a second phone to an employee's multi-factor authentication from an unfamiliar IP address. That single anomaly triggers an investigation that uncovers the largest cyber espionage campaign in American history. For 14 months, Russian intelligence operatives had been silently reading emails at the U.S. Treasury, the Department of Commerce, Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. They did not break in through a firewall. They did not exploit a zero-day vulnerability. They wrote in on a routine software update, trusted, digitally signed, and installed by 18,000 organizations worldwide. SolarWinds is a company most people have never heard of, but their software runs inside the networks of 425 of the Fortune 500 companies, all 5 branches of the U.S. military, the State Department, the NSA, and the Office of the President. Their flagship product is called Orion. It is a network monitoring platform. Think of it as a surveillance system for IT infrastructure. Orion watches servers, routers, firewalls, and cloud environments. To do its job, it needs deep access, administrator-level privileges across the entire network, and 33,000 organizations trusted SolarWinds with that access. Every few months, SolarWinds pushes a software update. Orion downloads it automatically, verifies the digital signature, and installs it. No human intervention. That automatic trust is exactly what Russian intelligence was counting on. In October 2019, hackers from Russia's SVR, the Foreign Intelligence Service, also known as APT-29 or Cozy Bear, infiltrated SolarWinds' internal build environment. This is the system where source code gets compiled into the software updates that ship to customers. They deployed a tool called Sunspot. It sat quietly inside the build pipeline, waiting. Every time SolarWinds compiled a new version of Orion, Sunspot intercepted the process and injected 32 kilobytes of malicious code into a file called SolarWinds Orion Cord Business Layer DLL. The result was a backdoor named Sunburst. On March 26, 2020, the first Trojanized update shipped. It was digitally signed by SolarWinds' own certificate. It looked completely legitimate. 18,000 organizations installed it. Once activated, Sunburst waited 2 weeks before reaching out to a command server disguised as normal SolarWinds traffic. It communicated through DNS requests to a domain called avsvmacloud.com. From there, the attackers used a technique called Golden SAML to forge authentication tokens and move laterally across victim networks. They could impersonate any user, access any email account, read any file. And in June 2020, they removed Sunburst from the next Orion build. They erased their own entry point to cover their tracks. The scope of the breach was staggering. At the U.S. Treasury Department, attackers monitored email accounts of senior officials for months. At the Department of Commerce, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration was fully compromised. At the Department of Homeland Security, hackers accessed the email account of then-acting Secretary Chad Wolf. The Department of Justice reported 3,000 compromised email accounts across 27 U.S. attorney offices. The National Nuclear Security Administration, which oversees America's nuclear weapons stockpile, confirmed its networks were accessed. The State Department was breached. The Pentagon confirmed some of its systems were affected. Beyond government, FireEye lost its entire library of red team hacking tools. These are custom-built offensive tools worth millions in development. Microsoft discovered that attackers had viewed source code for Azure, Exchange, and Intune. Intel, Cisco, NVIDIA, and VMware all confirmed they were victims. In total, the White House confirmed roughly 100 private companies and 9 federal agencies were compromised, and those are only the ones that admitted it. The discovery began with one alert. A FireEye security analyst noticed a new device registered to an employee's multi-factor authentication from an IP address that did not match any known location. that led to weeks of forensic investigation, which ultimately traced the intrusion back to the SolarWinds Orion update. On December 8, 2020, FireEye CEO Kevin Mandia made a critical decision. He went public. Within days, the cybersecurity world was in crisis mode. On December 13th, CISA issued Emergency Directive 21-01, ordering all federal agencies to immediately disconnect SolarWinds Orion from their networks. The FBI, CISA, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence formed a joint task force called the Cyber Unified Coordination Group. Microsoft mobilized over 500 engineers to analyze the attack. On January 5, 2021, the U.S. government formally attributed the attack to Russia. On April 15th, the Biden administration imposed sanctions, expelled 10 Russian diplomats, and designated the SVR as the responsible party. And in October 2023, the SEC charged SolarWinds Chief Information Security Officer, Timothy Brown, with fraud. Prosecutors alleged he had misled investors about the company's security posture for years before the breach. The SolarWinds hack changed American cybersecurity policy permanently. On May 12, 2021, President Biden signed Executive Order 14028, mandating zero-trust architecture for all federal systems, requiring software bills of materials from government contractors, and establishing new supply chain security standards. CISA estimated the total economic impact at over $100 billion across all affected organizations. SolarWinds alone spent more than $40 million on remediation. The company's stock crashed 40%, dropping from $23 to $14 per share. But perhaps the most lasting impact was psychological. The attack proved that the most dangerous intrusions do not come from brute force. They come from exploiting trust. A digitally signed update from a trusted vendor, installed automatically by 18,000 organizations, carrying a 32-kilobyte payload that gave a foreign intelligence service the keys to the U.S. government. The SolarWinds hack proved that the most devastating attacks do not break in. They ride in on trust. If this story kept you watching, subscribe to Cyber Decoded. We break down the biggest hacks, scams, and digital crimes the world has ever seen. Hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.